The UAW strike last fall has Ford now rethinking where it's going to build future vehicles. CEO Jim Farley said at a conference this week that when the UAW shut down Ford's plant in Louisville, Kentucky during the strike, it changed the company's relationship with the union.
And speaking of that Kentucky plant, the UAW says nearly 9,000 workers there will strike again next Friday if they can't agree on a local contract. That's separate from the national agreement made in November. Meanwhile, UAW President Shawn Fain says he expects to unionize at least one non-union automaker in the U.S. this year.
Joining us tonight is Professor Marick Masters from Wayne State University. How you doing, Marick?
Very well. Thanks for having me this evening. Good to see both of you.
Good to see you as well. So what do you make of this? By and large, people have considered the UAW strike last year to be a win for the union, for those workers. But is this suggesting that maybe it wasn't as much of a win as we thought?
Well, I think it's a situation where there are a lot of moving parts in a turbulent industry with still tense labor management relations. There's been a volley of words between Farley and Shawn Fain, which reflect some differences of opinion about what the company is going to plan to do. There also is some interesting situation at a local facility in Kentucky. Local strikes are not uncommon in this industry from a historical standpoint because local agreements are decoupled from national agreements. I think this is probably a nudge to get the parties closer to reach an agreement before the deadline of a strike. And then the transition in the industry to electrical vehicles, as your previous segment indicated, is one wrought with a lot of challenges and interesting opportunities. And companies will have to compete very aggressively in not only the production front, but the technology front to stay ahead of the game.
And it's understandable for them to try to nudge to get better, but could there be any potential for this to backfire somehow and negatively affect those employees?
Well, I think any strike is always a risk. It's a calculated risk, and usually if it goes on for an extended period of time, the most seriously impacted and harshly impacted are the employees because they are, relatively speaking, less capable of withstanding the economic hardship.
So when Farley says they're thinking carefully about where they're going to build these vehicles, what are the options really? Can they just go somewhere where there are non-unionized workers?
Yes, there are lots of options that they have, both domestically and internationally. And I think what he is saying the quiet part out loud, that there's some ill feelings over the contract negotiations that were recently concluded, and that the situation has changed and that they're going to keep their options open and being more forthright about that than perhaps they would have been at the time that they signed the agreement, in which they made a commitment to expend a little over $8 billion in investments in North America.
Now, from the employees' standpoint, do you feel like this is worth the risk, or do you think they're kind of pushing their luck a little bit? Because what we saw was very historic last year.
Well, I think these are disputes over local issues, health and safety issues, as well as the skilled trade, the integrity of that group. So these are not issues which are reconciled at the national level. They're not the main staple economic issues that we heard so much about. And these are important issues nonetheless. And as I indicated before, historically, these situations have not been uncommon. You have a situation in the UAW where they decouple national and local negotiations, and they don't make the former contingent on the settlement of the latter.
Let's talk about the UAW and Fain saying he's close to organizing another non-union shop. What do you know about that? And I mean, is there any reason to think that he may not? It kind of feels like a dog chasing a tail here. If Ford moves production elsewhere, could they potentially unionize that shop?
Well, I think that they could try any number of different approaches. I think the UAW, what it's saying is that it's going to try to organize one plant this year, at least one plant. Now, the likely candidate for that would be the Chattanooga plant with VW, where they have over 50% of the members already signing up to support the UAW to represent it. And I might add, as a footnote to this, the National Right to Work Committee has issued a legal notice to the workers at Chattanooga, reminding them of what their rights are, and that if they do sign these agreements, these authorization cards to authorize the UAW or representative, they still have the right to rescind it. And they also have the right, if they haven't signed them and voiced their support, to institute a campaign against the UAW. So both sides are moving pretty aggressively to see who wins this battle.
Well, we will be following it closely to see who does indeed win. Professor Marick Masters, as always, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, and you both have a great evening.
You too.